Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Can you hear? Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I can. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
How's it going, man?
Pretty good. I'm a little bit tired, but good tired.
Okay. How was surfing
Yeah.
today?
Surfing was great. Surfing is hardly ever bad. It's a little bit like yoga. Even like the crappiest days surfing are still, you still kind of feel better when you get out.
Amazing.
Unless you like hurt yourself or something, but fortunately that's never happened to me yet.
How
Knock
often do
on
you
wood.
go surfing? Are you any good at surfing?
So I have been surfing for probably like almost 14 years. I think I started when I was about 2021.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but to answer your second question, well, I guess I didn't answer your first question either. I used to go a lot when I lived in the city, but since I moved to the East Bay 6 or 7 years ago, I went less. And then, I moved to Sacramento, so I went even less. And over the past few years, I've gone very few times.
Mm.
But so before yesterday, the previous time I'd gone was like back in February.
Okay.
And then to answer your second question, I am not very good. No. I mean, like I've been surfing for long enough that I can read the ocean pretty well. And I can like situate myself in a favorable spot to catch incoming waves if it's not too big and I'm feeling brave.
Okay.
But once I'm up and riding, like I'm not, I'm probably like a 5'11" surfer at catching waves, and I'm probably like a 5'10" minus surfer at riding waves.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I imagine catching waves must kind of be like on-siding a 5'11 where the holds keep moving around as you're climbing.
It's really tricky. It's hard to describe how difficult it is to surf. I mean, I think that people who grew up doing it, it's just like innate for them.
Uh-huh.
But if you don't start until your 20s, it's like, wow. Because I grew up snowboarding and I thought that maybe it would translate. Because I'm like, I started snowboarding when I was like 6 years old or something. But surfing is like 10 times harder than snowboarding to me, at least. It's difficult, but once you sort of get a feel for the ocean and get a feel for how waves interact with the coast and stuff and how they behave, I guess, then it becomes easier to catch waves. And then you learn all the little nuances, like how to position yourself on the surfboard and, how much to paddle and how to, transfer your weight and stuff once you're up so that you actually go down the face and stuff. There's so much to it, which I think that, good surfers don't even really think about. But for someone, my level, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm kind of like an intermediate, maybe even intermediate plus on a good day surfer where I'm, I still have to kind of think about the technique a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not innate for me. But yeah, the last 2 days of surfing were freaking incredible.
Nice.
Yesterday was like one of the best sessions I've ever had at Ocean Beach.
Nice. What made it so
Yeah.
good?
The waves were really good for me. Like
Not too big, not too
I can,
small.
not too big, not too small. Yeah, it was like a solid 4 feet.
Okay.
Um, Maybe the occasional like 5 foot set, but mostly it was like 3 to 4. And just like the glassiest, nicest conditions. Not too many people out. And, I usually go out on my longboard. And so I can sit nice and far outside and, catch the waves, get in early and stuff. And yeah, it was so fun. I went out with my buddy Mark yesterday and we were just having a blast. And, there were dolphins surfacing, like migrating down the
Man.
beach, and pelicans were like, these groups of pelicans would like swoop in and like glide down the faces of the waves in front of you.
Oh, that's
And not like
incredible.
in front of you while you're surfing, but like they would glide like the incoming waves and stuff.
Uh-huh.
and they're just so graceful and beautiful, and the waves were amazing. And I mean, the smoke here is still pretty thick, not showing many signs of letting up anytime soon. But so the coast, like the part of the city that you could see, was pretty eerie looking, but the air was so still that it was like really quiet in between sets. Like out in the water, it was like pretty quiet. And, there's like a handful of surfers around, a couple dozen or whatever. But nobody's really saying anything. So it's kind of funny because it's just like super quiet in between the sets because there's no wind. And then, the sets would come and so you just hear the crashing of the waves, and the Great Highway is closed right now to cars, car traffic. So you can't even really hear cars.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
Even though you're like at the edge of San Francisco. But yeah, surfing is amazing. It's super therapeutic, Yeah,
I was going to ask that. It sounds like it must be.
I mean, like I said earlier, it's like, it's a little bit like taking a yoga class or something. Like you almost always feel better to some degree, even like way better when you get out of the ocean. So yeah, I just did that for a couple of days in a row.
Nice.
And yeah, feel it, my shoulders and back and even my legs are really, really, really sore in a way that they're not usually sore climbing. But I feel I feel pretty like blissed out.
Nice. Is it good cross training, or does it just totally wear you out for rock climbing and you just need to recover?
I think if you have like a lighter surf session, it can actually be like a really nice warm up. Like I've gone climbing the same day that I've gone surfing here and there a few times, and you feel you can feel really relaxed when you get out of the water. So like I've gone to the gym or whatever, and one time I went to Mickey's Beach after surfing, and I've had like decent sessions. But if you go for as long as I did the last 2 days, like you're pretty fatigued. Yeah. And it's like, it's a lot. I mean, I was joking today with my buddy Vitaly, who I went with, that I climbed on his home wall last night. And I was like, man, if I had done as many moves on the wall as I had strokes paddling in the water, I would be like really sore. Because you probably you paddle like, 500 times with each arm or something while you're out in the water for 2 hours.
Yeah. What about your skin? I imagine all that time in the salt water must kind of mess your skin up.
It actually doesn't mess with mine as much as you'd think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like I actually climbed a little bit on their woody last night after I went surfing yesterday, and my skin felt really almost glassy.
Huh.
Because I climbed on granite like a few days ago for a couple days, and I think I developed some like decent little granite calluses.
Okay. And
the surf yesterday morning didn't seem to mess with my skin at all.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, maybe because it's like cold water, or because it's like salt water or something. Maybe it's like
just sucks all the oils out of there, and
I don't even know if it does that. Yeah, maybe like the salt content. Maybe because it's cold or because it's salty. It doesn't like prune your skin very much.
Okay, you don't get the pruny hot tub hands. Gotcha.
No, not at all.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, when I reached out to you for this, you pitched a really interesting conversation idea, and I would love to jump into this. As much as I'd love to just make this a surfing podcast and keep asking you surfing questions, because it's super interesting. But yeah, you had an idea to talk about self-perception and self-limiting beliefs, and I thought that was really interesting. What was it that made that come to mind? It sounds like that's just something that you've been thinking about and kind of observing lately with maybe yourself or just with other climbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's something that I've been keenly aware of with myself and with just everyone that I climb with or even observe climbing for the last probably 10 years or so. I think when I was first starting climbing, like I wasn't quite as aware of it, just how much like our self-perception played into our performance on the rock. But I think, as I get older and I just like think about these things more and more, I have little epiphanies about it, and I think the last one, I think I had been toying with this idea that climbers' biggest limiting factor with performance on the wall is their self-perception. I think I'd been toying with that quite a bit in the few days before you texted me and say, hey, I wanted to run these ideas by you about like an offshoot sort of podcast idea that I had.
Calls. Yeah.
Right. So I think I was like, and then, we talked about your idea. And then afterward, I was like, hey, I think a really good idea would be to like, ask the pros that you have these follow-up calls with, if there's anything that like they've been thinking about in terms of performance climbing and, how people can get better and just how they've been thinking about performance climbing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that, the phenomenon that we're only as good as we tell ourselves we are is really, I think that that's something that doesn't get talked about that much in climbing. I think obviously mental training and, psychological preparation, strategy, all that is something that people do talk about quite a bit. But I think that something that like pro climbers don't talk about that often is how much, basically like when they're projecting something, like how much of that is simply just talking themselves into it. And I think I actually touched on this with Neely forever ago. And maybe we even talked about it too in the last conversation we had. But I think that when I observe people, especially like partners of mine and close friends and stuff, when I sort of like do the thing that my brain just does automatically, which is like evaluate people's climbing and people's like mental outlook and stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, look at you like telling yourself all these stories about what you are and aren't capable of, and like how long have each of these people really existed in that space of pushing what they think is capable for themselves higher and higher. I think the biggest difference between a beginner rock climber and Adam Ondra aren't like the muscle fibers that are covering their body. It's actually Adam Ondra is just way more familiar with what he's actually capable of. And like newer climbers, even like intermediate advanced climbers, they just don't know what they're capable of yet. But everyone tells themselves these stories about what they think they're capable of, like that's why grades are so limiting, is because they're just, everyone's like, oh, grades are important because they're a guide and, blah, blah, blah. And they help you determine what route to get on. It's like, okay, sure. Like you don't want to like get on a 514 by accident if you've never done a 513 and then just like I don't really know what the danger of that would be, but like the thing that grades do most for people is they set up this imaginary ceiling. They're like, okay, well, this is what I've done in the past. This is how strong I think that I know that I am or whatever. So this is how I'm going to do on this climb or whatever. People come to all these conclusions about how they're going to measure up on certain climbs before they even get on them. And then, they go up them once or twice and they're like, oh, well, I'm not strong enough to do this or whatever.
It is so often, or it is so interesting too, that you so often see that at the cusp grades. Like you see the climber that's really struggling to break into 12A or to 13A, or and I can identify with this one, like the 14A grade still feels like this really big daunting thing to me. But like breaking into 11D is, you never hear about that as like someone's big hang up. Like, oh, I just can't climb 11D. I've been trying for years. And it's so arbitrary, like that's just our American system. And I don't have any direct experience with this, but I've heard that it's kind of different in Europe. Like people get stuck at 8A, which is 13B. And it's, it's just because it's a different number system and they attach a different meaning to the grade.
Totally. Yeah. I'm sure that that's like a phenomenon that people could calculate if they want to, like how long did it take you to do your first 13A if you're American? How long did it take you to do your first 13B if you're a European versus your first 12D or your first, 13A? But we definitely automatically measure ourselves up to and use grades as something that, you know, we limit ourselves with, I think. I haven't like really witnessed this in person, but I heard the coaches at Touchstone talk about it a lot, how sometimes when the setters would set new problems on the wave at Ironworks, they would cover up all the grades before the teen team kids got there, and then they'd have them like session on the problems before they revealed the grades. And every single time the kids would climb a grade or two harder when they didn't know what the grades of the problems were.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So what should we do, Ethan? Just throw all our guidebooks in the garbage can and just go out climbing?
I mean, yes, I think that people should do that. I think that people should rely on guidebooks way less than they do. Because, you know, you see people come up to these areas and they look at the guidebook before they even look at the wall, or at least like before they even look at all the routes, you know? And it's like, don't let a guidebook tell you what to be inspired by. Just look up at the wall and pick a climb that you think is inspiring. And if it's difficult.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that teaser of this week's follow-up. If you want full access to follow-ups, you can sign up for $5 a month on Patreon at patreon.com/thenuggetclimbing. Or you can go to thenuggetclimbing.com and click on the support the podcast button at the top. If you're on your smartphone, just tap those two little lines at the top of the page and you'll see the button in the drop-down menu. $5 per month gets you access to all follow-up calls, past and future. As long as you are a member, you'll have access to all of them. As you just heard in the teaser, I've been recording some follow-up conversations with past guests on the show to talk about what they've been up to lately and to go even further into the weeds on a specific topic than we typically would on the podcast. Follow-ups are 20 to 30 minutes in length, occasionally longer, and I will be releasing one every other week to make sure I always have plenty of podcast guests to follow up with. If you sign up for follow-up calls, what you are really doing is supporting the regular podcast and helping me continue to chase down interesting guests so I can pick their brains and bring you new nuggets every week. And by signing up on Patreon, you get some bonus content to look forward to as well. In addition to getting access to follow-ups, I will also let you know who's coming up on the show, and you can submit patron questions for upcoming guests, as you have undoubtedly heard in other episodes of the podcast. $5 per month. Think of it as buying me a beer at the local brewery after a long day of climbing. Whether or not you choose to sign up, thank you for listening, and feel free to share the podcast with your friends or leave a rating on your listening app. It truly helps, and I appreciate you for tuning in. I am very grateful for you guys. Much love to you all. We'll see you next time.
Move with the rhythm. Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.